Imagine a single drop of red ink falling onto a pristine white surface. The contrast is stark, the red vibrant against the pure white background. This simple act, a common occurrence in our daily lives, holds within it a profound reflection of the very nature of our existence, mirroring the Buddhist concepts of impermanence and non-self. Just as the ink drop begins to spread, changing the landscape of the white surface, so too does our consciousness flow and change moment by moment. Vipassana meditation, an ancient practice taught by the Buddha, offers a way to directly experience this truth. It's not about intellectual understanding, but about direct perception, about seeing clearly the impermanent nature of our thoughts, feelings, and sensations. The red ink analogy serves as a powerful tool to illustrate this process, helping us to grasp the subtle and often elusive nature of our own minds. By observing the ink's behavior, its initial contact, its spreading, its gradual absorption, we gain insight into the impermanent nature of all phenomena, including our own internal world. This seemingly simple act of observation, when applied to our own minds through Vipassana meditation, becomes a gateway to liberation from suffering. It's about understanding that just as the white surface is not inherently changed by the ink, so too are we not defined by the transient experiences that color our consciousness. Let's delve deeper into this analogy, exploring the microscopic interactions. The red ink drop touches the white surface and begins to spread. Driven by inherent energy, it diffuses. Ink molecules in constant motion collide with surface fibers. Our senses, like ink molecules, are bombarded with information. Observing our internal world reveals the impermanent nature of thoughts. Our true nature remains untouched by the constant flux of experience. Imagine that first point of contact, the precise instant when the droplet of red ink kisses the pristine white surface. It's a fleeting moment, barely perceptible to the naked eye, yet it marks the beginning of a transformation. The pure white, untouched and whole, is now marked by this single point of red, an intersection of two distinct entities. This initial touch mirrors the way our senses meet the world around us. Our 6 sensory doors are bombarded with a torrent of information. Sight registers light and shadow. Ears pick up sounds, and the mind churns with thoughts. Each sensation, like that initial touch of ink, is a fleeting interaction. Just as the ink droplet doesn't remain static, neither do our sensory experiences. The initial point of contact is just the beginning. The ink spreads outwards, driven by its inherent properties. Tiny molecules diffuse, creating a growing stain. This mirrors how a sensory experience triggers thoughts and emotions. A sight or sound can set off a chain reaction in the mind. We see a sunset, and joy washes over us. We hear a noise, and our body tenses with fear. Vipassana invites us to observe this process without judgment. Zooming in on our ink stain surface, we encounter a microscopic ballet of ceaseless motion. Each ink molecule, once cohesive, now dances dynamically, colliding and seeping into the fibers. This vibrant, ever-changing landscape reveals the pervasive nature of impermanence. Vipassana meditation shows us that experiences constantly arise and pass away. Imagine the warmth on your skin as you sit under the sun. This simple sensation is a symphony of fleeting micro-sensations. Understanding impermanence is a direct experience cultivated through Vipassana meditation. Returning to our ink analogy, we might be tempted to perceive the spreading stain as a static entity, a fixed pattern on the white surface. However, this perception of solidity is an illusion, a product of our limited senses and our tendency to grasp at fixed forms. In reality, the ink stain is in constant flux, its boundaries blurring as individual molecules continue their relentless dance. This tendency to perceive solidity where there is only flux extends to our perception of ourselves and the world around us. We cling to the idea of a solid, unchanging self, a fixed identity that persists through time. But like the ink stain, this sense of self is an illusion, a mental construct woven from the ever-changing threads of our experiences. Vipassana meditation helps us to see through this illusion of solidity, to recognize that what we perceive as a solid self is, in reality, a dynamic process of physical and mental phenomena. The Buddha described this process in terms of the 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, which together create the illusion of a unified self. Just as a map is not the territory it represents, our conceptual understanding of ourselves and the world is not the same as the direct experience of reality. Vipassana meditation invites us to let go of the map and experience the territory directly, to encounter the ever-changing landscape of our internal world without clinging to fixed ideas or concepts. Visualize the red ink spreading across the white surface as a metaphor for the continuous flow of consciousness. Like a river, our awareness is in constant motion, ebbing and flowing, carrying with it a never-ending stream of thoughts, emotions, sensations, and perceptions. We can become so caught up in the content of this stream that we lose sight of its fluid nature, mistaking the transient for the permanent. Vipassana meditation, in its essence, is the practice of becoming intimately acquainted with this river of consciousness. It is about observing the flow of experience without judgment, without getting swept away by the currents of desire or aversion. As we sit in meditation, we become like a skilled boatman, navigating the rapids of our thoughts and emotions with mindfulness and equanimity. Each sensation that arises, whether pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, is like a ripple on the surface of this river. We observe it, acknowledge its presence, and then allow it to pass, knowing that clinging to it will only create suffering. we learn to distinguish between the sensation itself and the mental formations that arise in response to it, the judgments, interpretations, and stories we create around our experiences. This process of observation and disidentification allows us to develop a sense of spaciousness within our awareness. We begin to see that we are not our thoughts, our emotions, or our sensations. We are the awareness that witnesses these phenomena, the silent observer that remains untouched by the ever-changing landscape of experience. Section 4. Beyond reactivity. Finding freedom in the transient nature of experience. Let us revisit our ink analogy once more. Imagine now that the white surface represents our innate purity, our true nature, which is inherently free from suffering. The red ink, while symbolic of experience itself, can also represent our habitual patterns of reactivity, the clinging to pleasant sensations, the aversion to unpleasant ones, and the ignorance that perpetuates this cycle. These reactive patterns, like the ink, can obscure the underlying purity of our being, creating a sense of separation and suffering. We become identified with the content of our experience, mistaking the impermanent for the permanent, the impersonal for the personal. Vipassana meditation offers a path to liberation from this suffering by illuminating the transient nature of all phenomena, including our reactive patterns. As we observe the arising and passing of sensations, thoughts, and emotions, we begin to recognize their impermanent nature. We see that clinging to pleasant sensations only leads to attachment and eventual suffering when those sensations inevitably fade. Similarly, pushing away unpleasant sensations only amplifies our aversion and creates further suffering. By understanding the impermanent nature of these reactive patterns, we create space for wisdom and compassion to arise. We realize that these patterns are not who we truly are. They are simply conditioned responses that can be observed, understood, and ultimately transcended. These 6 sensory doors, gateways to experience. A single drop of red ink spreading mirrors the impermanent nature of our experiences. These experiences arise through the 6 sensory doors of Buddhism. Sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and mind are our gateways to the world. Each sense, like a unique color of ink, contributes to our experience. Section 2. The 5 aggregates. The building blocks of illusion. The 6 sensory doors are not merely passive receivers of information. They shape our perceptions and create our sense of self. This is where the Buddhist concept of the 5 aggregates comes into play. Our sense of self is an illusion created by the interplay of 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Form encompasses our physical body and the material world. Feeling refers to the sensations that arise in response to sensory input. Perception is the process of recognizing and labeling sensory information. Mental formations encompass all the thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and opinions that arise in our minds. Section 3. Deconstructing the self, seeing through the aggregate illusion. Our sense of self is an illusion created by the temporary coming together of the 5 aggregates. Vipassana meditation helps us see through this illusion, recognizing the impermanent and impersonal nature of these aggregates. By observing the arising and passing of each aggregate, we see their constant flux. This realization can be unsettling, but is essential for true liberation. Recognizing the impermanent nature of the aggregates, we break free from the cycle of clinging and aversion. This understanding allows us to experience the world with greater equanimity, acceptance, and compassion. Section 4. From Analogy to Insight. Embracing the transient nature of experience. The red ink analogy offers profound insight into the nature of reality. It reminds us that everything we experience is in a constant state of flux. This understanding of impermanence is a source of great liberation. By recognizing the transient nature of all phenomena, we free ourselves from suffering. We learn to appreciate the beauty of each moment without grasping at it. This understanding cultivates a deep sense of gratitude for the preciousness of life. By embracing the transient nature of experience, we open ourselves to a world of peace, freedom, and boundless compassion. Section 1. Mindfulness in Action. Observing the ink. Spread of experience. Let's explore how this understanding translates into Vipassana meditation. In Vipassana, we become keen observers of our internal world. We train our attention to the sensations of the body, noticing the subtlest of movements. Initially, our minds will resist this disciplined attention. Thoughts will pull us away, emotions will color our perceptions, and memories will surface. The key is to notice these distractions without judgment. With consistent practice, our ability to observe without getting swept away strengthens. Section 2. Equanimity, the unstained witness. We develop equanimity, a state of mental balance undisturbed by experience. Equanimity is like the pristine white surface, untouched by the spreading ink. Our natural tendency is to crave the pleasant and resist the unpleasant. Equanimity allows us to meet all experiences with open-hearted awareness. It's about developing a different relationship with our experiences. We learn to observe the arising and passing of sensations without getting caught in craving or aversion. This balanced approach is the root of true peace. Section 3. Insight. Penetrating the illusion of self. Through mindfulness and equanimity, we gain insight into anatta, or non-self. We see the 5 aggregates as impermanent, interdependent processes. The body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness are not static entities. They are dynamic processes constantly arising and passing away. This understanding cuts to the core of our habitual patterns of thinking. We see that there is no solid, unchanging self. This realization is the foundation of liberation. Section 4. The middle way, letting go, without suppression. The insight into non-self is not depressing or nihilistic. It's about finding a middle way between clinging to a solid self and rejecting our experiences. We don't try to scrub away the ink, nor do we let it define the entire surface. Vipassana teaches us to relate to our experiences with a balanced mind. We acknowledge our thoughts, emotions, and sensations without grasping or pushing them away. This middle way allows us to live fully in the present moment. We experience peace and liberation by letting go of the illusion of control. Section 5. Freedom from the inkwell, living with wisdom and compassion. Vipassana insights transform our daily lives. We see the world through the lens of impermanence, non-self, and interconnectedness. This wisdom transforms our relationships with ourselves and others. We free ourselves from greed, hatred, and delusion. We act with greater kindness, understanding, and skillful means. The freedom we experience is a gift we share with all beings. Vipassana aims to cultivate wisdom, compassion, and ethical conduct for the benefit of all. Section 1. The fading stain, embracing the ephemeral nature of self. The spreading ink highlights the impermanent nature of all phenomena. The 5 aggregates are in a perpetual dance of arising and passing away. There is no fixed entity, no solid self amidst this flow. This realization is the foundation of liberation. By recognizing the ephemeral nature of self, we loosen the grip of clinging and aversion. We understand that there is no unchanging I to be defended or protected. Like the fading ink stain, our sense of self is subject to impermanence. Section 2. Beyond the canvas, living with Vipassana insights. Vipassana insights transform every aspect of our lives. We bring mindfulness and equanimity to our daily activities. We become more aware of our thoughts, words, and actions. We interact with others with greater compassion and understanding. The world becomes a place of constant change and interconnectedness. This understanding fills us with a profound sense of awe and wonder. Section 3. The canvas of our lives, painting with wisdom and compassion. The red ink analogy, with its depiction of impermanence and the illusory nature of self, ultimately points us towards a life lived with greater wisdom, compassion, and freedom. Imagine that the white surface represents the canvas of our lives, and the red ink, the experiences we encounter along the way. We are not merely passive recipients of these experiences, but active participants in the unfolding tapestry of our own becoming. Through the practice of Vipassana, we develop the skillful means to navigate the challenges and opportunities that life presents. We learn to meet each moment with mindfulness and equanimity, responding to difficulty with compassion and to joy with gratitude. We recognize that true happiness and fulfillment are not to be found in external circumstances or material possessions, but in the cultivation of inner peace and wisdom. By letting go of our attachment to self, we open ourselves to a boundless capacity for love, compassion, and interconnectedness. The journey of Vipassana, then, is a journey of self-discovery and liberation. It is a process of letting go of limiting beliefs and embracing the boundless potential that lies within each and every one of us. It is a path that leads us ultimately to a life lived with greater purpose, meaning, and fulfillment.